Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 13th update on the tropics here. As always, these thoughts are mine alone, and in making decisions regarding these systems, please refer to the National Hurricane Center for all the latest information regarding these systems, and refer to your local weather office and your local authorities when you need to figure out things for yourself. Anyway, let's get into the tropics here. We have Tropical Depression Fred here over Cuba. We have Tropical Depression 7 here that just got designated according to the best track data, which essentially is what the National Hurricane Center ends up using for tropical cyclone designation. So we're looking at these. We're going to look at Fred first, probably a little brief discussion here, as the system is not a very well organized system this evening or this afternoon. We have a very broad area of lower level spin here at this point. We had the dominant lower level circulation actually just crash into Cuba here, and is somewhere in that second circle that I just drew. But this has probably not survived the trek over Cuba, so we can kind of consider this lower level circulation soon to be, if not currently, dead. So essentially what we're left with is a broad area of rotation that you're seeing here over the southwestern Bahamas and over the western Caribbean here. And we're essentially waiting to see whether or not a center tries to reform somewhere within this envelope here, and will likely reform under any intense convection that decides to develop. So essentially what we're looking at here is a mess that is going to come up and translate this mess over Florida here, and we're going to see a lot of rain due to the system's moisture envelope. There's going to be a lot of moisture translated over Florida here. And what models are forecasting is a comma-shaped system here that is going to come up, and we have our circulation here, and then all the thunderstorm activity is pretty much over Florida. And this is going to be a mess. This is not an intense storm. This is just going to be bringing a lot of rain, maybe some heavy surf, maybe some winds, but nothing intense. There's definitely not going to be a lot of storm surge with this. This is not a peak season hurricane that you're seeing here. This is a borderline tropical wave that is coming into the picture here for Florida, and this is going to be moving rather slowly, so there's probably going to be a lot of rain dropped here. But other than that, you're not going to see a whole lot. This is just going to be a very messy system, probably going to bring a lot of rain, and that's really it. If we look at the National Hurricane Center cone here, we have tropical storm warnings for the Florida Keys due to the possibility that it was at some point going to be able to re-intensify into a tropical storm. I'm not entirely sure that that is going to happen anymore. We have to see what happens to the lower level circulation, whether or not it reforms somewhere within the wave envelope, because if there is not a well-defined low level circulation, I don't see, and this is unlikely to reach tropical storm status again, but we do have watches and warnings up for the southwestern Florida coast and the Florida Keys, and this is going to come up through the straits here and pretty much go northwest into the panhandle here, and all this rain is going to be on the east side of the system. So if you're on the east side of the system, you do need to be watching for flash flooding, and stay tuned to the Weather Prediction Center for all the latest information regarding the rainfall forecast for your area. That's really it. This is not going to be something crazy. We'll talk about it tomorrow too, but this is definitely not something that is going to be a major disaster for this area. If we go back to the Atlantic, you have one more thing to talk about here. We have potential Tropical Cyclone 7. At this point, it's probably going to be Tropical Depression 7 here pretty soon. And if we go to the visible shot of the system here, you can see a kind of lopsided system here. We have our lower level circulation here moving rather quickly, and then you have, a bubbling area of intense convection on the southwestern side of the system's circulation here, and this has been kind of what's been going on with the system for the past couple of days. We've had a area of convection that blows up and then collapses due to the dry air that is off to the east here, and we have a lopsided system due to the easterly shear that is impinging upon the system, and it has been very difficult for the system to close off, and we probably have seen it close off now. This is definitely a tropical depression at this point, according to the National Hurricane Center. So we're starting to see the storm begin to organize here and maybe be able to strengthen some while it is facing this easterly shear. If we go zoom out to the water vapor loop here, you can see what I'm talking about with the convection that bubbles and then dissipates. You see this convective burst came up and then fell down, and that is due to this very large pocket of dry air off to the east of the system and the direction of the shear here, where the shear is coming out of the east. This is going to change directions here. This shear is no longer going to be out of the east as this moves off to the west here. And somewhere in this area, when it gets into this area just to the northeast of the Leeward Islands, the shear is going to change directions here. And that is due to, if we zoom out back to the water vapor loop of the entire Atlantic here, you can see a trough beginning to develop here. And this is really going to enhance as the system comes close to the islands here. And so the shear is going to change directions. And within that time frame of relatively low shear here, we're probably going to see the shear actually drop to 0 at one point here before the shear begins to pick up again out of the west. So we could see the system strengthen, and we really need to be watching how strong it can get before it reaches the islands, because if it's stronger, then it'll track north of the islands, and then we'll probably be having to talk about a strengthening system, but for a little longer, and maybe it'll survive the shear that it will be experiencing once it gets into the western, or into the central Caribbean, north central Caribbean here, and gets close to the Bahamas. But that is still a pretty far out thing that we need to be talking about, and we need to determine whether or not this is going to actually crash into land, because if it stays weaker and doesn't really take advantage of that time frame that it has for strengthening, then it'll probably crash into the Greater Antilles and just completely die off. But we do have to be watching this. It is August now, and we do need to be a little more wary of this system. If you're on the East Coast anywhere, you do probably need to be watching this just to, be wary. And this is a reminder that you do need to have your hurricane kits out and get ready to go if you do have a system coming your way. But we still have several days before we can even talk about that. Right now, we just need to be talking about what it's going to do in this area right here, what is going to happen, and we'll see, because it is entering favorable conditions. The relative humidity is generally higher here. There are higher sea surface temperatures as it goes further west, and there's lower shear within that region. So it does have a chance to take advantage of the rather optimal conditions here for strengthening. But after that point, it's going to run into a couple of hurdles. The TUT that we talked about here, and we can actually see this on the GFS model. If we go out to 72 hours, you can see what this trough essentially becomes. You have one upper level low here, and then you have another upper level low here, or this is actually upper level high, but you can see that this becomes a trough that just blasts the system to pieces. Essentially, if it's not a very strong system, it will get shredded to pieces here. And if it is a stronger system, then maybe it'll be able to survive. If the circulation is strong enough, then it'll definitely continue to fire convection and cling to life, essentially, as it gets through this. And you have the system will essentially be hoping at this point to get to more favorable conditions as it gets further west. But this upper level trough is definitely going to be a big roadblock, but we're going to see which roadblock it runs into. Is it going to run into the Greater Antilles here, or is it going to run into the trough here that you're seeing? So that is the next couple of days for this system. I'll be back with another video tomorrow talking about this system. As always, please refer to the National Hurricane Center, your local weather office, and your local authorities for all the latest information regarding your area. And stay safe. Thanks for watching.